The Brashear Station historical marker is one of the oldest in the county. On the front side it reads, "An early station on the Wilderness Road between the Falls of the Ohio, Louisville, and Harrodsburg. Brashear Station was a haven for pioneer hunters and travelers. It was built at the mouth of Floyd's Fork near the bank of Salt River in 1779. Founded by William Brashear, a famed woodsman from Maryland who was killed by Indians in 1781. The reverse side reads, "Also known as Salt River Garrison or Froman Station. Bullitt's Lick, major salt-producing area and hub of system of buffalo roads, was nearby. Early families who resided here for protection from the Indians included Froman, Ray, Briscoe, Christ, Collins, Overall, Pope, McGee, Hawkins, and Phelps. There is so much history packed in those few words." As the Continental Congress met in Philadelphia in 1776, there were perhaps fewer than 200 of their fellow colonists beyond the mountains in what would become Kentucky. Some were there to hunt, others to find land they could call their own. Two of the latter were Joseph and Marcia Brashear, cousins in an extended family. Their ancestors had arrived in America from France in 1658, landing in Virginia. Not finding the religious climate to their liking, they moved to Maryland and then later to southwestern Pennsylvania, where the small town of Brownsville sits today. They appear to have left their homes in Pennsylvania, perhaps alone or with a handful of others, and passed down the Ohio River to the Falls of the Ohio sometime that spring or summer. From there they followed one of the buffalo paths that led southward toward the Salt Licks. At some point they left that path and followed another one that led eastward. This modern map shows the final leg of their journey as they passed through what is now Bullitt Gap and turned eastward, arriving at present-day Floyd's Fork. They found land near the junction of the Salt Lick River and one of its tributaries, and here they stayed for a time. They constructed at least one shelter, cleared a bit of land, and perhaps planted a small crop. It is unclear how long they stayed in Kentucky, but at least Joseph was back in Pennsylvania, where he died in 1778. The red arrow on this map points to the location of the historical marker. 1777 was a difficult year for the young nation. This year, of the 3 bloody sevens, saw most Kentucky settlers abandon their claims and retreat eastward. Then in the spring of 1778, George Rogers Clark selected Corn Island above the Falls of the Ohio for his camping ground and supply depot in preparation for his campaign against the British forts in the Illinois country. This thrust back into the Kentucky wilderness cracked open the door for others to venture in. During the first years of the American Revolution, there was no legal way to claim what was called waste or unappropriated lands in Virginia. Then in 1779, Virginia established a land office and created a means by which these lands could be claimed. It provided that anyone who could prove settlement in Kentucky before 1778 could claim 400 acres, plus They had an option to purchase an additional 1,000 acres adjoining their settlement at a reduced price. Joseph Brashear was dead, but his brother William had inherited his claim to Kentucky land. As soon as the winter broke, William made his way to the Falls of the Ohio, where he found others who were willing to help him establish a small station or fort. They included Jacob and Isaac Froman and John Ray. This group made their way to the land that lay alongside where the Buffalo Path crossed the fork, close by where Highway 44 crosses Floyd's Fork today, and here they constructed the first station on the Wilderness Road between Harrodsburg and the Falls of the Ohio. When the land commissioners sent out by Virginia came to the Falls of the Ohio in November, William Brashear was there, ready to claim his land based on his brother's visit in 1776. Also present was his cousin Marsham Brashear, who had returned to Kentucky also. Both received 400 acres of settlement land and the right to 1,000 more. The certificate read, "We do hereby certify that William Brashear, heir at law to Joseph Brashear, deceased, is entitled to 400 acres of land in the District of Kentucky on account of settlement made and raising a crop of corn in the year 1776 by the said decedent, lying in the forks of Floyd's Fork and the town fork of Salt River, about 1.5 miles above the mouth of Floyd's Fork, and that the said William Brashear is also entitled to the preemption of 1,000 acres adjoining the said settlement, given under our hand at the Falls of the Ohio this 16th day of November, 1779. It was signed by William Fleming and the other 3 commissioners. Most of the certificates issued were of necessity rather vague in the locations of the claims, since they were relying on the testimony of others. William would also obtain a second warrant for a 400-acre settlement shown here. It had originally been issued to William Harrison and then transferred to Henry Beeson in February of 1780. Then Beeson transferred it to Brashear in April. It would be this warrant that William's son Nicholas would eventually use to patent the Brashear Station track. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. According to a deposition that John Ray made later on, after the station was constructed, he returned to the falls and helped drive some cattle from the falls to the station. He stated that at the same time a number of boats went down the Ohio and up the Salt River to the mouth of Bullitt Lick Run, where the families landed and followed the Buffalo Path to Brashear Station. This section of a 1793 map shows the routes they took. The red arrows follow the Buffalo Trace overland. The blue arrows follow the river route. The winter of 1779 and 80 was harsh, and the Indian danger was severe. The station was abandoned until the spring, when its settlers returned. Among them were William's family, his wife Anna Ray Brashear, and their children Sarah, Nicholas Ray, Ann, Nancy, William Jr., Joseph, Betsy, and the baby Jemima, who was likely born at the station that first year. Among those likely to have been residents at Brashear Station, we have these men's names: Paul Froman and his son Isaac, Paul's brother Jacob, and Jacob's son, Jacob Jr., William Brashear and his son Nicholas Ray, the brothers Spencer and Zebulon Collins, John and Benjamin Ray, William and John Overall, Nicholas Chris Sr., the brothers Patrick and Thomas McGee, Thomas Phelps, David Hawkins, and his two sons, John and David Jr., Andrew McMeans, James Young, Conrad Euler, John Phillips, and Thomas Phillips. This list is incomplete and doesn't include the women or younger children. As the year 1781 began, William Brashear held warrants for 1,800 acres, but needed to have the land surveyed so that he could obtain clear title to it. He apparently decided the station tract needed surveying first, and hired Ben Stansbury and George May to survey it, which they did in March, using the warrant he had purchased from Beeson to support it. But before he could obtain a deed based on that survey, William was killed. It is commonly reported that he was out, away from the station, perhaps along the river hunting, when he was attacked and killed by Indians. When he didn't return when expected, a search party is said to have found him, scalped. This likely occurred in early August 1781. Anna Ray Brashear was left a widow with 8 children. Within a year, she was married to Peter Cummins. With Nicholas Brashear as William's eldest son, he was heir to the land, and Ben Stansbury obligingly scratched out William's name on the survey and wrote in Nicholas's name. It would be Nicholas who obtained the land's deed a decade later. Mud Garrison near Bullitt's Lick Salt Works was erected in the spring of 1780 to protect those involved in the salt works there. That same spring, another station called Dowdall's was erected downstream from Brashear's to relieve the overcrowding at Brashear's station. As the years passed and the danger of attack lessened, the salt industry expanded and new stations developed to accommodate the growing population. Brashear Station continued in existence for a time, but as the danger lessened, more and more of its occupants moved on to settle their own land until it faded into the mist of time. All that remains is a historical marker to remind us of these early times. This has been a presentation of the Bullitt County History Museum. Thank you for joining us.